Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is the 14th episode in my Bookish Favourites Advent Calendar series, and you can find the rest of the episodes in the description box. There's a playlist linked down there. Today I want to talk about the second non-fiction book in this list, in this Bookish Favourites series, and that is A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Now this is usually described as an essay or a lecture, and it was published in 1929. I did not expect to like this as much as I did when I read it. I borrowed a copy from my university library. You know, it's a fairly short book. I think it's just over 100 pages, and it is written in first person. It is really written like a speech. And in that, Virginia Woolf goes through several reasons why women find it so difficult to express themselves creatively and, more importantly, to make a living from it. And even though this was published 90 years ago, a lot of her arguments still have value and still have worth and still have validity today. For example, how women's access to education was hindered by the historical fact that women didn't have access to education. So if you are female, and then it's likely that your grandmother didn't have the same amount of education as your grandfather, and your grandmother's grandmother certainly wouldn't have. So there is a long history of women not being able to pass on education, and similar issues arise around the accumulation of wealth. Because women historically have not been able to accumulate wealth, they have then not been able to pass this wealth on to women of the next generation. And I think we still see this today. How is it that Eton College, a very expensive, very exclusive boys' boarding school, has produced more prime ministers of this very country than any other single school? It shows that there is a huge amount of money that still is exclusively dedicated to boys' education in comparison to girls' education. And of course that then leads to the doors being opened to boys that aren't open to girls. The old boys network, the old school tie, you've all heard these phrases. And Virginia Woolf really speaks about it in A Room of One's Own with a degree of humour that is a pleasant layer over a large amount of anger. And I found that so very refreshing, because sometimes we just have to laugh about things in order to not cry in desperation. So she goes through a series of thought experiments in her book, including about a hypothetical sister of William Shakespeare. Would she have been able to produce the same amount of works, assuming that Shakespeare had a sister with the same amount of genius and intelligence as he had? Another part that I really enjoyed was when she talks about sitting in the British Library and looking up books about women. And noticing how obsessed men are with writing about women in a way that almost makes women look like some exotic animal that has to be discussed and examined and theorized about, rather than part of the human race. So there's a lot of really interesting topics that she touches upon in this really quite short essay. And that's why I would really recommend this book to everyone, whether you are female or not, because well, first of all, it is incredibly well written. The prose is beautiful, the humor is subtle, it flows really nicely from one argument to another. It combines aspects of storytelling with more philosophical arguments in a really beautiful way. I mean, essay writers can certainly learn a lot from the craft that has gone into this particular essay, but also in terms of subject matter. Whether you are a raging feminist or not, I think we can all learn from thinking about our own place in the world and our own history and the history of our ancestors. We can learn a lot about all of these things from A Room of One's Own. So let me know if you've read it and if you were similarly blown away by it as I was. I have to say this is only the second ever non-fiction book that I've given 5 stars to. For someone who doesn't normally read non-fiction, I was amazed by how easy I found it to get through this book, despite its age, despite its subject matter. See you tomorrow, and thank you for watching. Bye!